guys, it's Heather from Kell of a Plan. Today I'm doing a video that has been requested by a lot of my followers on Instagram, and that is how did I meet Matthew? So many of you know Matthew as Mr. Kell of a Plan, but Matthew's my husband, and today is our 2-year wedding anniversary. So I thought it would be fun to finally share our story here on YouTube for all of you who have asked. So this is not planner related. It really has nothing to do with planners, but I thought it would be fun to share because so many of you have asked, how did we meet? What is our story? Stuff like that. So in celebration of our 2-year wedding anniversary, I wanted to share that story today. So first off, everyone wants to know, how did I meet Matthew or Mr. Kell of a Plan? I'm going to call him Matthew in this video, but anyway. So Matthew and I actually met online. So I have a twin sister, her name's Holly, and she met her husband online in 2012. Yeah, 2012. And they met in, they met in 2011 online. And then they got married in 2012. And so they were just, once they got married, they were like, Heather, you just need to try it out, go like get a profile, see what happens. And so I did. I got a profile in the beginning of January of 2013. And I met a couple different guys, talked to a couple different guys, went on a couple different dates, and let me tell you, they were horrible. I mean, there was one that was just the date was horrible. And so I actually started talking to Matthew at the same time as I started talking to this other guy. I won't say his name, but I went on a date with this other guy, and it was like the worst date I have ever been on. And it pretty much sealed the deal that I was done with online dating. I was like, this is not me. I'm done. And so I had already been talking to Matthew though, and he asked me out 5 times before, like asked to meet me 5 times before I finally said, okay, fine. And the only reason I think I ever said okay was because he asked me to go to dinner at like one of my favorite restaurants ever. And so in my mind, I was like, free dinner at my favorite place? I guess I'll go. So I went. It was a Tuesday night. January 29th of 2013. It was Tuesday night. It was rainy. It was cold. And to be honest, I didn't want to go. I spent all afternoon trying to come up with a reason to stay home. And the only reason I think I got in that car was because it was at my favorite restaurant. Let's be honest. I went for the food. Anyway, so I get there. We were meeting there because we had never met before. We had just talked. I get there first. So I get a table. I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And he said traffic was bad, which is probably true because it was rainy. But also, now that I know him, he may have just been late because he likes to be late to things. Anyway, so I'm waiting and like I wasn't excited about this date. In my mind, I was thinking I'm going to get a free dinner and then I'm done with online dating. Because like I wasn't talking to anyone else that I had met online. He was the last one. So in my mind, it was just like, go get the free meal and then be done. And you can move on to better things. Well, while I was waiting, I said a prayer and I just asked God to, let me know one way or another. Just somehow let me know. Cause I didn't want to waste time on a guy that wasn't going to be the one, I guess. Anyway, so he finally walks in and I remember I was sitting in a booth and I could see like the entry. And so he walks in, he was way cuter in person than he was on his pictures, which is a good thing because normally when you date online, it's the opposite. They're not as cute as their pictures. He was way cuter than his pictures. So he walks in, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's cute. And he smiles and he has this dimple over here on the side of his face. And I'm like a sucker for dimples. So he smiles. You can't really see it now because his beard is so much more full that you can't see his dimple as well as you could when we met. Anyway, he smiles. I'm like, oh my gosh, he has a cute dimple. Look how cute he is. And so he sits down and we order food and we just talk and he makes me laugh like the whole time. He's so funny. Matthew is so funny. And so he makes me laugh like the whole time. Conversation was so easy and good. And then when our meal came, he prayed for our meal, which that had never happened for me when I went on like a first date with someone. I had never had a guy say, do you care if I pray with you over our meal and over this date? And I was just like, that's awesome. Like, go for it. And it was just like, it was such a good date. And you have to keep in mind that I went into this thinking like, I'm getting free food and then I'm going home and I'm done. But like, at this point I knew like, I'm not just going home and being done. This is something. And so we eat dinner, whatever, it ends. And since it's a Tuesday night, like that's all we did. We just went to dinner. And So he walks me to my car, tells me goodnight. I get in my car, and at the time I was in a group text message with some of my girlfriends, and they like were all in wanting to know what was going on. So they knew like when I went on the date that I was not planning on making this like a thing. And so I texted them when I get in the car, and all I said was like, that was amazing. I could see myself marrying this guy. Like I said that after the first date, which I've never done that before. That's insane. But I said I could see myself. Anyway, so that, I guess that wasn't, in my book, that was our first date. In Matthew's book, that was when we met. He says that wasn't our first date. That was just a meeting in Matthew's world. So Matthew says our first date was Friday. So like fast forward 4 days later, 3 days later, whatever. And we went bowling, and then we went to get tacos. And Matthew says that was our first date. And it was a lot of fun. We had a blast. And then that was on Friday. And then Tuesday, he came over to my house, and I cooked dinner, and we played video games. Because girls, if you want to hook a man, you make him think you like video games. So that's what I did. I mean, you know, I don't have anything against video games, but I don't remember the last time I played one. Anyway, we played Mario Kart Wii. So, cooked him dinner, which I hate cooking. He didn't know that then. Anyway, cooked him dinner, played video games. I was like the winner, okay? Like, he probably thought he had hung the moon with me. I'm just kidding. He probably didn't really think that. Anyway, so that was our first like week of dating. And then things kind of slowed down a little bit. Like, he lived about 35 minutes from where I lived. I lived in Dallas, and he lived in the mid-cities. And so it was about 35 minutes from each other's houses. So we couldn't see each other just like every day, because like in DFW, if you want to get from Dallas to the mid-cities after work, traffic is horrible. So like during the week, we only saw each other like once a week. And then Matthew also had some guy friends that he spent a lot of time with. And so he wasn't ready to just give up his bachelor life right away. So our dating life kind of was slow at first. We would see each other once a week, maybe twice a week. It took him forever to kiss me. Like, forever. My friend, which he's going to be so mad that I just put that in this video, because he told me not to say that in this video, but I just said it. Like, my friends had pretty much been like, Heather, this guy has friend zoned you. You need to let it go. He hasn't kissed you yet. It's been forever. He's friend zoned you. And I'm like, no, he hasn't friend zoned me. I know. Like, at this point, I had been praying about our relationship, and I was pretty confident in the fact that this was the man I was going to marry. And so, I was pretty confident I wasn't friend zoned. So I just waited it out, and, he eventually kissed me. It was well worth the wait. It was a long wait though. And so around the time that he kissed me, it was probably like a month or so later. So this was like, anyway, he invited me to go to church with him, because I went to church. I had my own church in Dallas, and he had his own church just north of Fort Worth. But he asked me to go to church with him one Sunday. And so I was like, yeah, sure. You know, I'll go to church with you. And so I made the drive. I went over to his church. I met him at his house. We went to church together, and we get to church, and we sit down, and his best friend went with us too. So it's like his best friend, him, and then me. And then he's like, hey, Heather, can you save the 2 seats on the other side of you too? And I said, yeah, sure. Who's going to sit in them? He's like, oh, my parents. And I was like, oh, your parents are coming. I'm about to meet your parents like right now at church. Like, he didn't prepare me like at all. It was just like, yeah, they're going to sit right next to you. I was like, oh, you know, you kind of want to prepare for that. I had no time to prepare, because pretty much as he says that, he's like, yeah, they're going to sit right there. Oh, look, there they are. And he like points them out, and I'm like, oh, hello. Like, but to save me, they didn't know I was going to be there either. So they weren't prepared either to meet me. So anyway, met his parents at church. So that was fun. So that was about 5 months after we started dating, was when I met his parents. And after that, that's when it really kind of started like, okay, we're doing this. This is for real. And we never really had the conversation of like, are we like exclusive? You know, like the talk where you define the relationship. We never really had that. One night we were just at his house, and he said something like, well, blah, 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 my girlfriend, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, you have a girlfriend? And he's like, I think I do. Aren't you my girlfriend? And I was like, okay. And that was like pretty much how we defined the relationship. I don't even remember when that was. Anyway, so that's our first date. That's how I met his parents. How long did we date? I get that question a lot too. We started dating in January of 2013, and we got engaged on my birthday in 2014. So we went home in May of 2014. Home is Alabama. That's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. That's where my family lives. We went to Alabama in May of 2014 for my little brother's wedding. And I kind of knew that Matthew was probably going to ask my dad's blessing to propose while we were there. So that was in May. And so after that, I was kind of like, every time I saw him, I was just like, we're going to get engaged today. So like, I always made sure I had my nails done. And I was like, always just like, it's going to happen. And then it wouldn't happen. And it wouldn't happen. And it wouldn't happen. And it wouldn't happen. And I was like, oh my gosh, this man is never going to propose. And like, every time I'd see him and he wouldn't propose, I would just be mad. And so anyway, my birthday's in July 8th. And so July 8th rolls around and I spent the day at my friend's house, at her pool, which in a weird thing is now our house. We ended up buying that house from her when she sold it. So anyway, I basically was hanging out at our house, but when it was my friend's house, out at the pool for my birthday. And they like, you know, had cake and all that kind of stuff. Cause it was a weekday. And so Matthew was at work but I'm a teacher. So I was at the pool anyway. And like all day it was pretty much like, he better propose tonight. Like it's getting ridiculous. And so, I got out of the pool that afternoon, took a shower, got ready, and this house is only like 5 minutes from where Matthew lived at the time. So right before our day, I just went over to his house because I had been here. So I just went over there. And so I get there and we were ready and we go to dinner. So we go down to Joe T. Garcia's, which is in Fort Worth. And it's an amazing Mexican restaurant. So if you've never been there, you should. Anyway, we go to Joe T's and we're eating dinner. And I texted my friends and I was like, I don't think it's going to happen tonight. I was like, he's not acting nervous at all. And like, I was convinced that Matthew would be nervous when he proposed. Well, he wasn't acting nervous at all. And so I pretty much texted him. I was like, it's not going to happen. I need to let it go or else I'm going to ruin my birthday for myself because I'm going to be mad when he doesn't propose. So I decided like, I'm not going to be mad. I'm just going to let it go. And so we eat dinner and then we walk back to the car. And so we get in the car and he's like, do you want to go to the Fort Worth Water Gardens? And I'm like, sure, let's go. And in my head, I'm thinking, why would we go there unless he's going to propose? So I'm like freaking out on the way there. So we get there and we drive around and we drive around and we drive around and we can't find a parking spot anywhere. And so finally Matthew's like, well, we can't find a parking spot. So whatever, let's just go home. And I'm like, okay, well, he's obviously not going to propose because if he was going to propose, he would be like, we're going to find a parking spot. He wouldn't just give up and be like, oh, well, let's just go home. But that's what he said. He was like, let's just go home. Oh, look at that hair. Anyway, so I'm like, dang it. So we like turn the corner to go home and there's a parking spot. And so he's like, oh, look, there's a parking spot. Let's just go ahead and go since we're here and we found a parking spot. And I'm like, okay. And at this point, I'm like, I don't want to go here if you're not going to propose because it was July in Texas. Let's be honest. It was hot. And so like, I'm thinking like, I don't want to walk around this water garden just to walk around this water garden. And so we walk around and it's like, oh, this is pretty. I'd never been there before. So it really was pretty, but it was hot. And so we get to like this part of the water gardens where you can like walk down into where all this water's falling. There's like these big steps that you can go down. I'll put a picture here so that you know what I'm talking about. And so we get to the top and he's like, let's go down there. And I'm like, okay. So we start walking down, but like the steps are really slippery because the water's like coming down. And so the steps are really slippery. And the shoes I had on were just not the right shoes to be wearing in slippery areas. So we get like to the second step and I'm like, Matthew, I am going to slip and fall down this waterfall. Like I cannot go all the way down there. And so he's like, fine, that's fine. Let's go back up to the top. So in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, he must really not be proposing because if he wanted to propose down there and I said that I didn't want to walk down there, he would have been like, too bad you're walking down here. Like he would have made it happen. So he's like, fine, let's just go back up to the top and sit down. I'm like, okay. So we go sit down, and we're like sitting on this bench that overlooks the thing that's looking down. So we're sitting there. It's so hot. And I'm just like, it's so hot. Why are we here? He's not proposing. Why are we here? And so then he's like, what do you want your birthday present? And I'm like, sure. And so he hands me this bag that he's been carrying. It's like this little gift bag. And so he hands it to me. And there's my dog barking. Anyway, he hands me the bag, and I like reach into it. And I feel this little tiny jewelry box. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a ring. This is a ring. So I'm like freaking out again, because now I'm like, oh my gosh, she's about to propose. I'm like freaking out. So I pull out this box. I'm so excited. I open it, and it's these earrings. These pearl earrings, which are beautiful. Obviously, I still have them, and I wear them like every day. They're beautiful. I love them. But I'm like, well, that was a tease. Because I had once again convinced myself that, oh, he was going to propose on my birthday. And it was these earrings. And so I'm kind of like, ugh. And I think he could tell that I was like annoyed. Actually, I know he could tell. So then he like stands up, and he walks behind me, and he's like, come here. So I stand up, and he like hugs me, and he starts saying like all this nice stuff about like how much he loves me and why he loves me. And like in my head, I'm thinking he's just saying all this because he realizes that he just ruined my birthday. He realizes I'm thinking that he just now realized what I thought would be in that box, and he feels like crap. So that's why I'm thinking that he's saying all of this nice stuff. And so honestly, I wasn't even paying attention that much to what he was saying, because I was #annoyed. So, he says all this nice stuff, and I'm not really paying attention because I'm mad that it was earrings in a jewelry box. And then all of a sudden, he's like on his knee, and I'm like, what? What's happening? And he proposes, and he pops out my ring, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, so like he proposes. Obviously, I say yes. We walk back to the car. We like call all my family on FaceTime and like tell them we're engaged. And then we go, because none of my family lived here. And then we go over to his parents' house and tell them, even though they knew it was happening. And so, yeah, that's how we got engaged. It was pretty much like he's going to propose today. He's not going to propose today. He's going to propose today. He's not going to propose. He's going to propose. He's not going to. He proposed. Like, it was like a crazy emotional roller coaster. But it was also perfect. So that's how we got engaged. And then, that was in July of 2014. And so then we set a wedding date. I wanted to get married as soon as possible, but I'm a teacher. So it's kind of hard to like pick a wedding day that coincides with when you can go on a honeymoon, unless you want to get married in the summer. And I knew I didn't want to get married in the summer because it's hot, and I don't like to be hot. And so I did not want to wear a big bulky wedding dress and have fancy hair and all that stuff when it's 100 degrees outside. So I knew that I did not want to get married in the summer. But I also, since it was already July, I didn't really think we could plan like a Christmas wedding, and I didn't really want a Christmas wedding. So we planned for March 7th, which was the first Saturday of my spring break. So we got married in Parker, Texas, which is just north of Dallas. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Plano, Texas area, but it's like just outside of Plano. It's also, Parker, Texas is where the ranch is that's in the show Dallas. Anyway, we got married about half a mile from there at a different ranch called Cross Creek Ranch. And it was so perfect. If you're in the DFW area and you're looking for a place to get married, I highly recommend Cross Creek Ranch. It was all inclusive. So like they handled everything. It was just beautiful. It was kind of like a rustic-y theme. My bridesmaids wore gray, which I can pop a picture right here to show y'all their beautiful dresses. And the flowers were yellow, and so it was like a gray yellow theme, and it was just perfect. It was the best day ever. I wish I could relive it like all the time. It was the best day. I got to marry my best friend in front of all my favorite people, and it was just the best. And so we got married on March 7th, 2015. So today's our 2-year wedding anniversary. Anyway, we then went on a honeymoon to Jamaica. We went to Sandals in Jamaica. His parents actually gave us that as our wedding gift, which was a huge blessing that we didn't have to, you know, pay for our honeymoon. And so we spent an amazing week in Jamaica, and then we came home, and at this time I owned a house in Dallas and he owned a house in the mid-cities. So he had sold his house like 3 weeks prior to us getting married. And like the day we get back, we're like, we should sell this house and buy a house together. Like we decided like literally the day we got back from our honeymoon. So like our first week of marriage was spent like prepping the house to get it ready to sell. And it went on the market like not even a month after. It was like 2 or 3 weeks after we got married, our house was on the market, which I don't suggest to any newlyweds. That was crazy. So we sold our house in Dallas, and then we moved to the mid-cities just because it worked out where Matthew works. He works like just north of Fort Worth. And so for him to drive from Dallas to where he was working was just too far. So we got a house that's kind of in between our 2 jobs. And we actually bought it from my friend, like I mentioned earlier. Anyway, so that's our story. We've been married now for 2 years, and while marriage is a lot of work, it's also been the biggest blessing. Matthew is my best friend, my biggest supporter. He makes me laugh every single day, and I mean, when you get married, I remember standing there saying our vows thinking like, I love this man so much. And now 2 years later, like, it's just crazy to think how much more I love him now than I did 2 years ago. I mean, our marriage is the biggest blessing in my life. He's the biggest blessing. He is just the best man that I ever could have asked for. And when I think back to the fact that I didn't even want to meet him at that first Tuesday rainy night in January of 2013, I'm just really glad that I did. So anyway, that's just a kind of short version of our story. Obviously, I probably could have talked for hours and hours on end, but I just thought it would be a fun little story to share with you guys today on our 2nd wedding anniversary. So thanks for watching. I promise to get back to planner-related videos, but this was a fun, different thing to try out. So, all right, have a great day. Happy Tuesday. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button, and happy planning.